Okay, so when it comes to approaching learning kanji, which I still would say is probably the hardest part about learning Japanese, you basically want to take what is known as furigana and Ramaji and basically just rewrite everything in such a way, break it down a little bit. If you can identify what the kanji means and all the different ways you can read it, then you'll understand what it's writing is. Or basically just figure out what it would be written in Ramaji. If you can figure that out, then you should be able to figure out what the words are that you're trying to spell. It's just, like I said, it's just a different writing style. It's there to throw you off, but at the same time, it's not. It's just there because the real reason the Japanese imported it was because at one point they wanted some, like, because as you get older, obviously the Japanese become smarter, so they're able to take complex letters and basic letters and they can write sentences with them. In exchange for learning more information, they also are able to make sense. So it's not like hiragana and katakana where everything looks like it's all written next to each other. But if you look really carefully, you can see the spaces. That was the thing that threw me off over the years. But I believe that what kanji really did was it was another writing style. So rather than just so they imported the writing style over from the Chinese, and it seems like every Asian culture seems to have their own kanji system up until a certain point, based on what I've seen. But every country that has its own culture and every country that has its own language, it's a different language. Like Japanese is different than Chinese. Chinese is obviously different than Korean, but at the same time, there are other similarities. Just to throw that out there in case you're still learning Japanese. So basically, what you would want to do with kanji is you basically just want to break it all down, figure out what its reading style is, memorize that, and it should be no different than you speaking it fluently. It's just like maybe just an extra step in being able to identify what it is. And even if you don't know it like right offhand, you could use apps to translate it too. So it's, there's always a way. But at the same time, though, you can write kanji letters in words by themselves. And, well, it really, again, it depends on how it's spelled and what that definition is. But, like I've said, really the easiest way to memorize Japanese, if you want to summarize it all in one sentence, is just memorize everything. Try to pay attention to the way it's being used. Remember, verbs always go at the end, and then try to identify where the sentence begins. Try to find the flow of the grammar, and there you go. That's another good way you can identify the dialects in learning Japanese. Because the thing is, it does seem like a lot of work. It seems really confusing at first. But when you really get so good at it, you'll really be surprised that I would say that Japanese is a lot easier than most languages out there. Granted, it is a little bit longer, so if you want to say like length might have something to do with difficulty because the more you have to memorize. But at the same time, it's a lot straightforward. It doesn't have confusing grammar laws, for example, like English. See, all you really have to do is just practice, from the beginning, figure out the alphabet, figure out the words, figure out the grammar. If you can do that, you can memorize it in no time, and you can speak it fluently because you'll know it. It starts coming to you. Like, you could literally take a trip to Japan, and you would be absolutely amazed at what you would know if you memorize the whole language. You wouldn't, and not only that, you could save yourself a lot of money because you would know like how to speak it fluently, and you wouldn't have to hire a translator to do it for you. So that would actually be another plus. But it really depends on what you're after, though. But basically, I'll say this though. I do recommend though, if you're somebody who does travel, that you should be very careful with how you approach like what you do in a different country because you never know what it's a different country you don't know unless you really research it, and you really should research the language just in case no because the more you can prepare for what's ahead. So there's always that possibility. But basically, yeah, all the kanji, try to memorize as much of it as you can. Try to find out the most common ones too and go from there, because if you can do that, then that'll be a lot easier too for you.